Hey everybody, different video. No, it's not a follow-up to the cancel culture video that I've been in the works on making, even though that is coming at some point in the future. This is something that honestly has been welling up inside me, not just with the release of Brand New Day, but over the last, I'd say, maybe decade or a little over a decade, ever since the TASM series started. And it really came up in my mind fully when I was having a conversation with one of you guys through TikTok Messenger. And I realized, okay, I feel like I have to get this off my chest. First, for some context, there's been a lot of rumblings and speculation about Tobey Maguire's role in Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars, that he could possibly die in the beginning of Doomsday or maybe at the end of Secret Wars, depending on what they do with him. Nothing's 100% confirmed on that. I've read some theories and some quote-unquote leaks. It sounds pretty legit, but at the same time, with today's world in the AI realm, who knows really what's true, even though there's a lot of insiders who have all these different sources in the industry. It's not uncommon. We've seen stuff like this happen before with other films, but I feel like it's worth taking this with a large grain of salt with the AI stuff like I was talking about. I'm kind of in a mindset of just waiting and see what happens, although admittedly, I am really scared about what they might do if they do indeed kill off Tobey. Because also, they've been talking about how the destructive area that we've seen in the trailers for Doomsday, that could be Tobey Maguire's universe in the grand cosmos of the multiverse. That could be, depending on what happens, or it could be just a random universe entirely, like the 828 universe with the Fantastic Four. I haven't really delved too deep into the discourse, to be honest with you, because it can be mentally exhausting for me to read all these different takes and all these different sides of the arguments and if it's true and if it's not. So I'm kind of just dipping my toes in the water a little bit, reading around a little bit just to see, okay, what's this person saying? What are they saying? What's this website saying? Who the hell knows? So we're just gonna have to wait and see until opening day 4 months from now. But the speculation train is gaining a lot more steam and momentum as it gets close to its destination. So expect the discourse to get a little more ridiculous and hysterical as we get closer, depending on what gets leaked, if it's legit or not. So all that out of the way, I had a talk with someone recently, one of my followers through TikTok. People are getting really nervous about what could possibly happen with Tobey Maguire's portrayal of Spider-Man in the opening of Doomsday, if that's what's going to happen. And I was seeing the discussions between the Escape Pod podcast and Coy Jandreau. Escape Pod's got some pretty absurd takes as far as I'm concerned, but they're very entertaining. Coy Jandreau, on the other hand, I actually do respect the guy, and I think he does know what he's talking about, even if I have some strong disagreements with him on Spider-Man. Well, in some areas anyway. And I got nothing against the guy personally, but I was kind of surprised by how nervous he was, considering his takes on Tobey Maguire's portrayal. I thought he and Hat Guy were for some reason going to be applauding that idea and saying, woo woo woo, more Andrew Garfield, more Tom Holland. And just to be clear, I do love Tom Holland's Spider-Man. I was actually kind of shocked that they were getting nervous about that, considering the impact that Tobey's trilogy made on so many people, including me. And in this conversation, it came up on how the Raimi Trilogy fans get so defensive whenever somebody criticizes that trilogy. And it got me thinking, am I really just some rabid fanboy for Tobey Maguire and Sam Raimi? Am I one of those pesky fans of that trilogy that wants everything Spider-Man to be a certain way, like it was in those three films? Considering my thoughts on the Home trilogy with Tom Holland, if you're to watch any of my reviews, or even my verdict on Brand New Day, I would like to vote no on that one, but it's certainly a valid statement. And I can point out a few examples as to how the fans of that trilogy in particular get really passionate and sometimes a little too extreme. From my end anyway. I know some people will say that they go way too far, along with the likes of the Fandom Menace, the Star Wars fan base. I don't know if I would go that far with it, but it's definitely echoing some of those emotions that I've seen from that fan base. I'll be honest, I'm admitting I'm a fan of that trilogy, but I am a fan of Spider-Man in general. It's not just Tobey's portrayal. There's other areas of Spider-Man that I do really like, or even love, like I said with Tom Holland and Brand New Day, or even the Insomniac Spider-Man games. And I have read a fair share of comics, not a whole ton, but I've read enough to know what the character's all about, and I can appreciate certain portrayals even if it's not 100% in line with what it was actually like from the beginning in 1962. But I guess one example that comes to mind for Raimi Trilogy fans, when the Insomniac Spider-Man game back in 2018 or 2019, when they put the Tobey Maguire suit as an extra add-on, correct me if I'm getting the details wrong on this, I think they just couldn't get the costume out on time, or maybe they were initially not interested in having it, but there was a huge backlash over the idea that they were going to have it, but they decided not to, and the fans of the Tobey Maguire trilogy got really upset over that. Maybe I did get upset over that, and I just don't remember. I don't know. It was a long time ago, like 8 years ago. But even I was recognizing in some way, whoa, guys, just calm down, all right? They got other stuff to worry about. If it's gonna come, they'll get to it eventually. And eventually they did end up giving us the costume, and they gave it again in the second Spider-Man game from Insomniac. So it all worked out in the end. But the backlash, as I was talking about, was very, very off the charts. And I've wondered, why do fans of that side of Spider-Man have that reputation? And you could say a similar thing with Andrew Garfield's portrayal or Tom Holland's Spider-Man or maybe some other areas of the Spider-Man mythos or the fan base. Speaking as someone who got into the character from that trilogy alone, I can speak for myself on how I became a fan of that character with that trilogy as my entry point, and seeing other adaptations of the character like the 90s show and realizing, oh, he created mechanical web shooters, actually. Or no, he's actually more confident in and out of the costume, as I was reading some comics that some family members gave to me as Spider-Man 3 was coming out. I was very intrigued by the comics that I was reading. It was the original Steve Ditko, Stan Lee era. And I realized, okay, so Tobey's very different from his comic book counterpart, but they still got the basic idea of the character right, as far as the humanity and the everyday struggles and so on. What I'm trying to get at is that I realized that there was a lot more to Spider-Man than what I was seeing in the movies, but I still had an appreciation and a soft spot for that trilogy. But I cannot emphasize this enough, and I'm more than certain you guys are tired of hearing this from me. I know I drove my parents crazy when I was growing up because of how obsessed I was with that trilogy, and I still think I do drive them nuts whenever it comes up in conversation. So Mom, Dad, and to my sister, I am so sorry that I took it to extremes. I did not mean to do that. But that trilogy, for better or for worse, those first two films in particular, actually that first one, very near and dear to my heart, and it's actually my favorite movie of all time. I am not ashamed to admit it, even though, well, actually I take that back. Maybe there is a part of me that's kind of embarrassed to admit that, because I know some of you guys who follow me say you should watch more movies than just the comic book stuff. And believe me, guys, I'm trying as hard as I can in the last couple of years to expand my horizons a little bit. I don't always get it right, but I am doing my best. And when Spider-Man 3 happened, as far as the Sony execs getting their hands in the pot so much to the point where the movie turned out the way it did, you can like Spider-Man 3 all you want, but I think most of us can agree it was a very scatterbrained mess of a movie that didn't really have enough time to let certain plot points breathe and play out in a way that actually made sense. And when they announced that they were going to do a Spider-Man 4 as possibly kind of repairing some of the damage that was done, the Sony execs got in the way again, and Sam Raimi decided, you know what, if this is how you want to do it, we're just not going to make this movie. And Tobey said, well, screw it, I'm not doing it if he's not doing it. And everybody else followed suit. So rather than just admitting that they fucked up, reaching out saying, okay, let's work together and figure out how to move forward with this Spider-Man 4. They decided that in order to keep the rights, they were going to reboot the entire franchise. I mean, we all know how that turned out. Obviously, the TASM series has its fans, and they think that Andrew Garfield is the best Spider-Man. I disagree, but a majority of the fan base does believe that. All that aside, even when it had its fans, there was still a sense of bitterness from some other fans, even if they were purists, maybe few and far between, if anything, that had this feeling of, well, come on, I mean, you could have just made Spider-Man 4 and we didn't have to go through all this trouble to just wipe the slate clean. It was kind of alienating for me, as seeing just how it was all going. And the attempt was really clear to keep it for money reasons, and also to appease the fans who felt wronged by the original trilogy. Those who want superficial comic book to movie accuracy. That's a whole different topic entirely, and I'm not here today to discuss that. But speaking for myself, and there were some other people too, whether they were fans or not, felt that this reboot was way too soon. Why did we even try to go this quickly? Even with that series, and it only continues on with Tom Holland's portrayal as it later turned out to be with the MCU. And to be honest, I think that is what we really needed after the fallout of TASM 2, because I do really love what Tom Holland has brought to the character, especially in recent years with Brand New Day. There is still a part of me, though, that feels kind of bitter about how Sony handled this whole situation in the first place. And I think maybe if I had to guess, I don't know for sure, if fans of the original trilogy felt the same way as I do. All they had to really do was just step away and not stick their hands in the pot and stir it so much. Tobey coming back in No Way Home definitely helped, I think, cure some of those woes, if anything. If they made a Spider-Man 4 with Tobey, like there was some talk about that a couple of years ago, I don't think that's going to happen anymore now in light of what we've been hearing with the next two Avengers films. But Tobey is still going to be around in some capacity. Now, for how long, I don't know. Same thing goes for Andrew Garfield. I don't know how long they'll keep him around, if they're going to maybe have them show up in some sort of special appearance type of way. If that's all it is, then I don't have a problem with that personally. But inevitably, those two guys are going to say, look, we had our time. Let Tom take the reins here for a change. He's the future. I have to tell myself this too. Even though I feel a strong attachment to Tobey's trilogy, Tom is obviously the one carrying this forward. And I have to tell myself that on a regular basis somewhat, that, look, inevitably there's going to be a change. There's going to be a new reboot. Either just be open-minded to it or just stay in your lane and not even give it a try. And I always found the former option to be much more beneficial. I guess it's really what I'm getting at, is that there's a sense of maybe entitlement, I guess, if you want to call it that, or maybe some sense of bitterness, or maybe it's all those emotions. You know, that trilogy really brought a lot of people into the Spider-Man fandom and into the comic book fandom. I can speak for myself that Spider-Man in general was my entry point to the grander Marvel universe. And I just see this all the time with online discussions and how people tend to be dismissive of Tobey Maguire's trilogy, and they tend to prop up Andrew Garfield's portrayal like he's some sort of Spider-Man messiah. At least in my mind, that's how it turns out to be. I know this sounds extreme, and I apologize for it coming off that way. I do wonder sometimes, maybe it would be easier for me in the online world if I just said Andrew Garfield was the best Spider-Man and start dunking on Tobey or even Tom. Future Joe here. I say the same thing about Brand New Day and Tom Holland as well. There was a part of me after I started recording that review. Maybe I should just say that Brand New Day is the best Spider-Man movie ever, and that Tom Holland is actually the best one, because I felt like there was going to be some people in my audience that said, come on, Joe, just say it. Come on, just let go of your biases and say it. Please, just say it. Just say it. Because I felt like that would have made everybody else happy. I know this probably doesn't make any sense, or I probably sound too extreme. I meant what I said, being among the best of the Spider-Man movies, but it was a very conflicting feeling I had, if you know what I mean. But then I realized, no, don't do that. Even if it doesn't get you a lot of subscribers or viewers, it's not worth changing your opinion just to appease the current crowd. And I hope that you guys actually respect where I stand, even if I do come off as defensive and entitled about that trilogy. But what I'm really trying to get at is that, you know, I'd like to think that I'm not some rabid, blind Raimi Maguire fanboy. I do love those films very much, particularly the first two. But also, I am open to other interpretations of the character. Why else do you think I have Homecoming with Tom Holland's Spider-Man in there? I would like to read more comics going forward, like Kraven's Last Hunt, which I do have a copy of. Spider-Man Blue, I've heard some good things about. And I've heard some other people talk about Superior Spider-Man, and I've heard some mixed things about it. I'm not sure what the consensus is on that. If any comic book readers have anything to say about that, just let me know down below. What I'm trying to say is that, you know, I hope that you guys understand that as much as those films are near and dear to me, I am not a blind fanboy when it comes to that stuff. There's definitely a lot of nostalgia to it and a lot of rose-colored views that I look through that with. But objectively, I think 1 and 2 are just fantastic adaptations or Spider-Man films. For me personally, and I could say a similar thing with Brand New Day, and even to a point with No Way Home. I just wanted to get some of that off my chest, and hopefully you guys understand what I'm trying to say here. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but I hope that you guys understand that I am not a blind fanboy. I do my best to remain as objective as I can and call out things that I think are bad in a certain Spider-Man adaptation, but also recognize the good that's in there. But again, I'm speaking from my own perspective, my own individual subjectivity. And I know every other person is going to have their own response, or they're going to feel a certain way about something when it comes to media and Spider-Man. I'm not perfect though, and I don't think I ever will be. But whenever I get certain clips of this kid on TikTok or whatever named Jordan Lucas, who I did a response to his claims on who was the most overrated Spider-Man, who was the most underrated and overhated. If you ever watch a clip of that kid, and I'm sorry to anybody who follows him, I know some of you guys do, it's fine if you do, but as far as my opinion on Jordan Lucas,
fucking punk.
I posted part 3 of my response to him because, you know, for time purposes, I couldn't fit everything in there. Once I got that out of the way, I said, all right, that's it. I don't want to do any more. But then I get more clips of guys like Jordan Lucas talking about how he doesn't like certain aspects from that trilogy, and I feel like I have to respond to him again. It's one of those things where it's like, I really don't want to do it, but then you guys want to see me do it, so the feelings with that Catch-22 are a bitch. Even if I don't like Andrew Garfield's portrayal that much, like most fans do, I like him in No Way Home, and I can appreciate what he did there, and I can appreciate some other interpretations of the character, even if some of them aren't as good as others in my estimation anyway. Thank you all for hearing me out on this, even if I sounded like a big whiner or a big crybaby over this. I hopefully didn't come off that way. I'm too self-conscious of myself. I really need to stop doing that. Anyway, that's all I gotta say. Thank you all for tuning in. Just let me know what your thoughts are on this topic down below, and if I do come off as too much of a rabid fanboy, please let me know. And stay tuned for more videos coming up soon, like my Uncharted review and the Peter and Gwen video. Really excited to share that stuff with you guys, among other stuff that I got coming up soon. So yeah, that's the end of that, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Later!